The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Jack Barazzini. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, I want to start first by mentioning our sponsor. We, as a listener to The Secrets of Tech, you may be a developer or know a developer looking for an opportunity to work for a company with a mission that matters. And Faith Life are the makers of Logos Bible software, the Verbum Catholic Scripture Study software, and a product they call the Integrated Ministry Platform for churches. And they're hiring full-stack developers. Most of the positions can be worked remotely, and they offer competitive salary and benefits. It's a company where the employees have an average of 5 years of tenure, and their company values, in addition to being a Christian company, makes Christian software, they include honesty, openness, and awesomeness, which is the best one. So to check out the open positions, go to faithlife.com/careers and tell them you heard about it on The Secrets of Technology. So let's talk about tonight's topics. If you, I don't know I'm going to name episodes before we record them. Sometimes that comes up as we record, but I'm kind of thinking this is going to be called Broken Smart Homes. And I think we've talked about, how most of us to varying degrees have embraced either all in like I have with smart home tech, Internet of Devices, or one or two things around the house that help automate things.
Right.
But would you agree with me that in the aggregate, it's a good thing that Father Corey, where do you stand with smart home tech?
Well, I'm very much getting into the smart home technology. I've got the Google Assistants plopped around the house. I've got the Nest thermostat, and I just put in the doorbell and things like that. So,
okay.
I'm definitely getting into it, and I do see it as generally a good thing, and generally something that does make my life a little bit easier.
Okay.
It's nice to be able to check my thermostat when I'm away from home. It is nice where, when somebody shows up or there's somebody come by, the doorbell will page my phone and let me know, things like that. So it definitely does make a lot of that stuff easier and better.
Jack, how about you? Where do you stand with smart home tech?
I like it, but I think I'm a bit more wary of buying the devices from larger companies just from the security standpoint. I used the Halo Nest, the Halo Nest Amazon Wi-Fi. I like that because it's really convenient, especially when you have a house that's really wide and you got to cover the whole area. I like that, I like the convenience of that. And I've looked at doing some of the homebrew security camera stuff like that. I haven't really gotten into the doorbells or the automated door locks or anything like that. I'm more wary about that, but I definitely think overall it's a good thing.
So, and as I said, I'm fairly all in. I've got the thermostat, I've got the doorbell, I've got all the lights and all that sort of stuff. I got a door lock and whatnot, and in general, I'm happy with it. But there's this article from Gizmodo, this writer there. She wrote, and it's Victoria Song wrote this, and she wrote basically, the first sentence is, while smart homes can be pretty convenient, they also require a certain type of never-ending vigilance. And the headline is, I'm tired of broken smart homes. And there's a little bit of truth in that. And this isn't just a chance for us to vent and complain about the problems of our technology. Well, we will do some of that. It's more about thinking as we get involved in these things, as we work with whether it's smart home tech or other tech, how to avoid the pitfalls, how to think about the potential problems and weigh whether the problems are worth the potential benefits of what we're looking at for technology. And I just want to give like a personal example of something that just happened to me along these lines. A few weeks ago, we had a power outage, I think. And when the power came back, things were fine. But then the next day, I wake up and none of my Philips Hue bulbs are responding to my commands, any of the automations, whether through HomeKit or the commands through the Amazon Echoes. They just weren't working, and this is why I have backup light switches still, so my wife doesn't kill me for the lights not going on and off. But it did work through the app, the Philips Hue app on my phone. It was driving me crazy. I got the bridge, the Hue bulbs work through a bridge. I reset it, unplugged it, plugged it back in, and I'm thinking maybe it's the Ethernet cable. I move it and put it smack dab on top of, I used to have it in the kitchen, which is more central. I move it smack dab into my office right on top of the Ethernet switch and plug it in there. And then it worked. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Couple weeks later, like just last week, wake up in the morning, same thing. I'm like, what is going on in the middle of the night? We hadn't lost power. So what's going on? Well, long story short, I'm not going to go through all the stuff. It was my Eero mesh system. It would update overnight and reboot, and whatever it was doing was mangling the network settings in the bridge enough that it would work internally, but it couldn't get out to the internet, which is how the Echo and HomeKit control it. And that's why those weren't working. And it's that sort of thing that kind of drives me crazy a little bit because it took me ages. And frankly, Philips has almost zero tech support on its site.
It's terrible.
It really is terrible tech support. And I tried Googling, and I eventually ran across a YouTube video that wasn't super helpful, but got me to, this was the solution. Unplug the bridge for more than 30 seconds, not for the 15 seconds that I was doing it first. It has to be for longer because apparently they have capacitors holding the charge a lot longer than I thought. And literally I had to just let it sit. And that's why it worked the first time. By moving it from one room to another, it was unplugged for longer. It's that sort of thing, which is not specific to smart home tech, but because this happens to all kinds of tech, but it's that sort of thing that drives me a little crazy about smart home tech.
It is kind of funny though, because having been involved on internet technologies of one sort or another, going on 25 years now, since the mid 90s, it's interesting how much we've overlaid something which does like text-based stuff very, very well, which the internet does. But with all this other stuff that we have overlaid with the video and the audio and the live this and the streaming that and the smart home Internet of Things stuff, we're really starting to see the weaknesses in the design of the internet. And these are the kind of things, these incompatibilities. And we're going to talk about, this company working with that technology and that technology working with this other company. And it's really kind of showing the cracks in the systems.
Yeah, it's all kind of creaky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not supposed to work that way. Well, so let's talk about some of the various problems that you can run into. So one of them is just keeping everything up to date, right? So you've got the apps that are on your phones or on your computer or on your tablet. Those got to be kept up to date. Yeah. You've got to keep the firmware in the first time I had to update my light bulbs, I started to question whether I've done the right thing with my life here.
Yeah. See, I've got the Hue as well, and I love that where you're like, turn on the light, nothing happens. You go to the Hue app, the light bulb needs an update. That's why it didn't turn on.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
I think part of it, the thing that frustrates me the most is when devices become obsolete.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that could be done to fix that, which is not going to happen because these are all proprietary companies, would be releasing open source APIs for older devices. So even if the company is no longer supporting it, you can still do something with it.
Right. And this was like issue a few last year, I think it was. I think we even talked about it. Was Google acquired one of these smaller companies. Google's notorious for doing this, by the way, with all kinds of software included. Acquired one of these smaller companies and then strung along the users. And then one day basically just said, you know what? Your device that you paid hundreds of dollars for is no longer going to work. No, and you have no recourse. That's just the way it is.
Well,
right.
What's funny is I just had something happen that of what we consider an established technology, laser printers. Hewlett Packard didn't update the security certificate in their drivers, so my 12-year-old color laser printer stopped working with my Mac.
Right. I remember hearing about that.
Because the driver was having issues. Fortunately, I have my Linux. It's a NAS, but it's just like a server. And so now I'm running it from the Linux or Mac to the Linux box to the printer.
Right.
And that's just one example of this kind of thing that crops up so often. And I think it's really a fear with some of this technology. And we're going to talk later about, stuff that Google is doing with Nest that's changing how their technology works.
Right. In fact, let's talk a little bit about that, because Google, another case of Google behaving badly. They're not the only company that does this, but they just have been doing this sort of thing. They bought Nest, the learning thermostat company, years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, at least so far. And there was this program called Works with Nest, where Nest would had this API, this programming interface that let third-party products work with the Nest, so that, for instance, you could come home and turn on your lights and it would adjust your thermostat, various things like that. I had an automatic, which was a device that plugged into your car, and when you arrived home, you could have it turn the heat up or put the AC on or whatever, automatically for you, that sort of thing. Well, and the automatic went out of business a few months ago, and that's a whole nother example of this. But they canceled the Works with Nest program. They said, we're not going to do this anymore, but we're going to offer you this other program. But what that meant was that every programmer, every company that worked with them had to totally shift gears and revamp and do it this new way. And if the company that made your product was out of business, or they didn't feel like it was a profitable venture for them, you're out of luck. And they forced everyone from, not forced, they wouldn't say it was forced, but really you had to migrate from a Nest account to your Google account, and that broke things along the way. And it's this huge hassle. And that's the thing, is it's not the end of the world, but it's a hassle. And it's another thing that just makes it more painful.
This is one of the reasons I've been so resistant to technology you put in your car, because it's the same kind of thing. You buy a car, and then in 10 years, whatever protocols you have working with it are not going to work anymore. Like, I don't expect that Apple Pay or the Apple Car or the Android car programs are going to work forever. It makes it harder to buy things for longevity.
Well, that's something that I've got going on right now with one of my cars. My Ford, which is a 2013 model, it's got the older version of the Sync software, the display software. So the Bluetooth still works, and the USB plug still works, and the Sirius satellite radio still works. But like to do the Apple CarPlay or the Android Auto, can't do it.
Right.
And it costs like $1,500 to upgrade this stupid little display. And and car manufacturers are a great example of this, because they're notorious about not updating anything, because they don't want to be updating their car 5-10 years down the road. They want you want Android Auto, you want CarPlay, go buy a 2020 Ford, right? Not update your 2013 Ford.
Right. They want you to buy a new one. We talked a little bit of something similar last week when we talked about Tesla bricking optional upgrades, like when people bought the auto drive The word escaped me for a second, but an $8,000 software upgrade that the original Tesla owner, original owner of the car, paid for, but when they sold it, it's a used car. Tesla turns it off. That person didn't buy this little software license instead of optional upgrade. This is a similar thing to this. So the smart car stuff, it's related to the smart home stuff. And you kind of, Jack, you kind of mentioned like there are ways to kind of get around this, like Homebridge. Homebridge is an open source project that links all these incompatible systems. So, like for example, the Amazon Ring video doorbell and video cameras and alarm systems don't work directly with HomeKit, the Apple system, but Homebridge will link it, and it's awesome. I can open up the Home app on my iPad and see my security cameras there from my Ring. That's great. But I have a reminder in my task manager every Sunday. Open up the Homebridge configuration page and make sure I update all the plugins because they get updated, which is great that they're updating them. These open source independent developers are doing this for nothing, but it's just another thing I have to remember to do.
It's not seamless, yeah.
And we want the seamless. We want the hello computer.
Right.
Type, we want the Star Trek. You just recite, computer, turn on my thermostat to 70 degrees, turn on my bedroom light, do this, do that.
Right.
Start the car, open the garage door. We want all this stuff where you just give the computer a command and it just does it.
Yeah, I want to see Picard on the bridge of the Enterprise, like having to remember the correct phrase for the computer to get him a tea Earl Grey hot.
If it's an Apple computer on the Enterprise, it's hot Earl Grey tea. If it's Google computer, it's hot Earl Grey hot tea. So,
I guess we know which system lasted into the 24th century then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing is we're getting trained by these devices to speak to them correctly. You know what I mean? So if I'm speaking to my Echo and I wanted to turn on my office lights, I say, Echo, I use the right word, Echo, turn on my office lights. No, I'd say turn on my office. Yeah. But if I'm speaking to the Apple device, I have to say, Shlomo, turn on the office lights. And I have to remember which one is which. And if I say office lights to Echo, it turns on one lamp because I called it office lamp at some point. It's just, it's crazy making. And that's the other part is the configuration. I've got to name things. I got to make sure that they're configured into the right room and, all this other stuff. And you probably know this better than I, Father Corey. When you move, everything changes. Like so. Oh yeah. I got to take everything out and pack it up and take it with me.
I had to go through when I moved over to the house I'm in now. When I changed parishes, I had to take all my Google Home Minis and basically reset them. I had to do like this, the hard reset.
Right.
Reprogram it from scratch. Take the light bulbs. Reprogram them from scratch.
Right.
And even still, it's kind of a frustration because one of my light bulbs is still packed away somewhere, but Google doesn't realize that. So it keeps trying to turn on the one that's sitting in a box.
I have the Nest Protect smoke detectors, and almost all of them I've been slowly replacing them because they're not cheap either. Well, that's a whole nother issue with this. This stuff is a lot more expensive than the old analog stuff. But I have one of these Protects that I cannot configure into the network with the rest of them. I cannot get it to. I follow all the steps. I reset it, and it's like literally because all the bedrooms are near each other. It's literally feet from the next one, and I cannot. And that one I get is fine, and this I cannot get it to show up inside the Nest app, and it's just it's these things, these little things. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Couple of the other issues is power outages. If you have if you have like lights, if the power goes out and it comes back on, all the lights in the house come on. Now I could change that so that they stay off, But then if the power goes out and that's so because that's a problem at night, right? If all the lights come on in the middle of the night and the kids are and then it takes time for the network to come back up and to reconnect to the internet. So I can't turn them off from the app until that process gets completed. Now I could set it so that they don't come back on, but that means that if someone flips a switch somewhere during the day, then you have to manually tell it to come back on. You can't just flip a switch to turn the bulb on quickly. You can't win. You just choose your pain.
It's almost like these things are almost smart, but we're not quite there yet to where it's truly like gonna learn your patterns.
Right.
You still got to do all the configuration yourself.
Yes, that's the thing.
And that is the hope, that eventually these devices, you'll be able to bring them in, plug them in, they'll talk to each other, configure themselves, and ready to go. And, we know that, the big three are trying to get their voice recognition to be as seamless as what we see on Star Trek.
Right.
That you just don't even have to think about it. You just say, Google, do this, and it figures out how to do it. You don't have to program it. You don't have to fight with it. It just works.
That's
true. Again, we are dealing with such disparate technologies sometimes, and again, very creaky technologies sometimes. That and it would help if these companies would actually work together, but right.
Well,
never going to happen.
Yeah, there has been recent movement in that direction, and I'd have to find it. I didn't have this up beforehand, but there is this movement to try to come up with a common framework that they can all address. It's got to be Apple, Google, and Amazon. I mean, because that's really what we've shaken out to. Is those are the three big names that everyone wants to work with, and there's been some movement there, but Lord knows whether that's ever going to actually happen, how quickly. But yeah, we need to get to the point where the technology works for us, where it adapts to us as opposed to the other way around, where we're constantly having to work for the technology. And that's very true in many areas of life, where we want this technology to work, so we do all this extra work to get it going.
Right.
It really should be the other way around, and hopefully we'll get there eventually.
Well, I do want to kind of leave with a positive note, at least.
Oh, good.
So in this house, it never actually had a doorbell, and of course, most house doorbells they're like 18-volt systems. You have to have a little transformer inside the wall somewhere for a doorbell to work. You can't just put a button on the wall and then a box on the outside or on the inside. So I was able to get one of the Hello Nest doorbells and a there's just a little plug-in wall wart, and then use my Google Home as the actual doorbell.
Right.
And it took me longer to actually drill the hole to run the wire from the inside of the house to the outside of the house for this wall wart than it did to hook it up to the rest of the system. This was one of the cases where, you've got a Nest set up, you've got a Google set up, boom, it just works.
Yeah, that is nice.
And that is the hope with a lot of this stuff, is eventually these technologies will come together at that point of literally you bring a new device in, and regardless of what name is on the box, it's going to work.
Right.
That's the hope.
Gets brought in.
That's the hope. Yeah, I have the Ring video doorbell, and it's battery powered, which means yet another point of friction, having to replace the batteries every once in a while on the cameras and on the thing. It would be nice. They do sell one that does connect to the wire in the wall, but my house never had the wire, or if it did have the wire in the wall, it's long gone.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, this one didn't have it at all. So it was just, and the Nest one does have a backup battery, but it doesn't have the capability of just running off of a battery. It needs to be wired up. And so that actually makes it work pretty well.
That's cool. That's good. So I'm not sure there's much more to say about other than it's broken, but there's hope that maybe it will work better in the future. And we'll be talking lots about smart home tech as time goes on, because it's become more and more mainstream. We'll be talking about some smart home tech later on, in fact, in a few minutes, because there's some fun stories there. But before we get to that, I do want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including this week Dennis T, Adam N, Lucas D, Russell T, and Joe S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So before we move on, Jack, a few months ago, I think, or at least weeks ago, you mentioned that you were going to be trying out the Amazon Halo fitness and health band, and you're going to get back to us on how that went for you. So you told me recently that you had, and so what's your review? What's your bottom line on this Halo band?
Yeah, so I got it about a month ago. It's in early access still, where you have to apply to get it. I think they're planning to release it just before Christmas for the holiday season. It's essentially a Fitbit without a screen. It looks pretty much just the same as the Fitbit, but the band goes over the top of your arm rather than underneath the device. And I used it for about a month. The app is really nice. It's really easy to set up. It does things like it tracks your heart rate. It does your sleep score. It has this built-in thing called Labs, which is it's essentially just fitness courses, or they tie in with the Headspace mindfulness app, so you can do different courses like that, and that's all included with it. It also does this thing where you can do a body scan, and it will calculate your BMI based on your body fat percentage, rather than just going off your height and your weight. And that was a cool feature. I did that a couple times, and the device works well, but the fact that it does not have a screen on it is kind of a deal breaker for me, because you end up checking your phone more often than not. And one of the things I wanted to do with this was be able to do the fitness tracking without having to look at my phone. Right. So there's no screen on it, which also makes it look more like a hospital monitoring device than an actual watch. It does not look very good. And the body fat percentage scanner is interesting, but you basically have to take a picture of yourself wearing an undershirt and boxer shorts. And as we've talked about before with Amazon, I don't really know if I want to be sending them those pictures. They say it's completely secure, completely encrypted, and you can delete all your data, but I'm still a little bit wary of that. So overall, I would say if you're going to be getting a device like this, the Apple Watch or the Fitbit seems to be a better way to go, just because it has more features and you can do everything on the device itself without having to use your phone. Right. I paid $69.99 for it, I think, on the early access price, but it's going to be $100 when it comes out, which seems a bit steep. So overall, cool idea, but I would say Fitbit and Apple have done that better.
That is interesting. Actually, they're pricing it at the $100 price range, because that is getting into Fitbit range.
Yeah, that was what was surprising to me.
Very similar devices. Because the Fitbit starts at about $100 too, so that's kind of different. Of course, the biggest advantage of Fitbit and Apple is they are watches. You can actually tell the time, like you mentioned. You don't have to pull out your phone. You could just do a silly thing like look at your watch.
Right. One other thing that it tracks your fitness using points. It has a point system where it's like you earn at least 150 points a week, and that's your minimum that you should be earning. And it will subtract points based on every hour over 8 hours a day that you're sedentary. And you get more points depending on how hard you're working out and how high your heart rate is.
Sure.
Which was nice. And that worked pretty well, except I noticed if I was on a stationary bike, I think it's because you're not really moving when you're on the stationary bike. Your wrist's usually in one place and your body's not moving around. So I'd sit on the stationary bike for 30 minutes working at a really high heart rate, and it would not record any of it.
Oh, that's disappointing.
So that's a kink that still needs to be worked out.
They do this thing, like tone of voice analysis too. Did you get a chance to check that out?
I tried it out for a day. It was the same thing with the body fat percentage. I didn't really want to be sending all that data to Amazon constantly, because when you do that, you have the watch running 24/7 listening to your conversations. Again, it was easy to set up. It seemed like it worked well. All the software worked well. There were not really any bugs other than, like I mentioned, the fitness tracking not picking up cycling. But again, I didn't really have a use for that feature.
Jack, you sound like a mild-mannered guy to me. I'm curious how it would deal with an Italian household. because we're always yelling, but we're not mad at each other. We're just all yelling all the time.
Just have like, I'm an Italian setting.
Yeah.
Put it on there.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it in. What is your ethnic background and your culture?
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, that's that. Thank you for that review. I mean, that's good to know. It's an interesting device, and interesting where they're going with it, and maybe this sort of technology will end up in other things. It's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I imagine they'll maybe when they make a newer version, they'll put like a screen on it, which would give it more functionality.
Yeah. Good. All right, so let's move on to some headlines for this week. And our first headline, this was the one I was hinting at earlier, involving the Ring video doorbells. So the headline is, Ring is recalling 350,000 smart doorbells after some of them caught fire. And of course, this is prime for the TV news, because we love to have these sensational things. Something in your home might kill you. Film at 11, that sort of thing. And it turns out, well, what was going on was people were trying to secure the doorbell, like the door, the battery door, because I was talking about the battery before. And instead of using the very tiny screw that you use they were using different screws that are long and pointy and piercing the battery. Well, we all know what a bad idea that is, to pierce a battery with a screw. Of course it caught fire, which is, I'm surprised more of them didn't catch fire.
I'm sure what it is again, like you said, it uses a small screw. So somebody's out there in their front porch.
Oh,
they pull the battery off. They lose the screw. They go, well, now what am I going to do? I gotta close this up. So then they go rummage through their junk drawer. Oh, this one looks like this will fit. Screw, crack. You know,
what they ought to do is either use capturing screws for the battery case, which it's one of those where you can unscrew it, but it won't fall out, or give you extras in the box, please. I lost mine. Yeah, I mean, I'm in that boat. The case stays on, but it's a proprietary
clips or something.
Yeah, it's a proprietary screw head too. Like the driver is this weird. I don't know what it's just. They give you the driver in the box, but now you've got to hold on to this driver forever.
And that might be part of it too. Then
right.
I'm going to lose this thing in a week, so just replace the battery or replace the screw.
So if you're worried that you might be among it's the second generation Ring doorbell. If you think you might be one of those people who has one of these doorbells, you can open up the app and it should tell you. They've updated the app to notify people. They had 23 reports of doorbells catching fire and 8 reports of minor burns out of 350,000. It's not a lot, but
it's not bad.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing that they're getting the press on CNN. Like you said, stay tuned to find out if your doorbell will catch on fire
and burn your house down.
Yeah.
Here's another article. This was kind of the theme this week. And another one of these articles where the headline is a little misleading. I think, Jack, you sent this one to me. Microsoft urges users to stop using phone-based multi-factor authentication. And the subhead is, use app-based authenticators and security keys instead. And I'm thinking, wait, aren't apps on phones? Well, it turns out what they mean is stop using multi-factor authentication that comes via text message or SMS or voice calls, which we've known for ages. Right. We've known this. But the problem is I would love to stop using those, but the companies that send them, they're the ones that need to change, not me.
Yeah.
So
yes, it's out of the consumer's hand.
Right.
Well, and it's you've got banks that they're doing. You've logged in from another computer. Let me send you a text message. Or worse yet, here's some questions that you answered 5 years ago when you set up this account, and you don't remember the answers anymore.
Right. Well, and this is the thing that kind of drives me a little crazy, because the worst offenders are those who are guarding the most important data.
Yeah.
Your bank account information, your health information. I can't tell you how often, Bank of America does this. They send you text messages. Yep. That's a terrible thing, because, as we know, phones can be clone jacked. They can be, if someone else can take over your number and get those messages and log in, you might as well not have this system at all if you're going to do that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So Yeah, thanks, Microsoft.
Well, and of course, you read the article further, and what Microsoft is doing is saying use Microsoft Authenticator, which is one of the many two-factor authentication apps. I use Google's Authenticator, and it works beautifully because they're all fairly cross-platform as far as, take a picture of this QR code from the website, and it links to your account, and it lets you do the two-factor, and it works fantastic.
I've talked before. I've used, in fact, my pick of the week has been Authy, which is a independent version of the Google Authenticator app that backs up into the cloud, which is nice. And 1Password will do it. LastPass will store those. Yep. And some people suggest there are reasons why you want to keep that separate from your password manager, and that sort of thing, which is reasonable.
Well, especially when you're using the two-factor authentication to get into your password manager.
Yeah. So you don't do that. Yeah. Then and I also use the YubiKey, which is a physical software key. I mean, a hardware key that has its limitations, because if you need the key when you're to get into something on your phone when you're out and about, you better make sure you have the key with you and it works with your particular phone, whether it's used near field communication or USB-C or whatever that is. So, but yeah, I mean, it's an excellent point. It does get a little annoying that I have to have the Authy, but I also have to have the Microsoft Authenticator. Steam has its own authenticator for Steam games, and let's see. Oh, and then so the Microsoft Authenticator, and then Google, separate from their authenticator. If you log in and they want you to open up, they have this option. I'll put it that way, where you can just, if I open up one of their apps on your phone, it will say, "Hey, are you trying to log in?" So that's actually convenient.
To be fair, that's because you're not using an Android device. On Android devices, literally as soon as I hit enter on the password, my phone immediately chimes.
Oh, okay.
Is this you? Yes or no?
That would be
and so that's what it's designed for. It's designed for Android devices that will immediately say, "Hey, this is a login I don't recognize. Did you do this?"
Okay. Okay. That's
so I don't have to open up an app. It's right there.
Great. Well, that brings me to my third headline.
Speaking of Google
and its users, Google Photos is ending its unlimited free backup of photos next year. So if you're an iPhone user and you've been using Google to back up, you have been only backing up low res or lower quality, not the full quality photos. So that's why I don't use it as my primary backup for my photos. If for your Android users, you've been getting high quality backup free, has not been charged against your 15 gigs, I think is the standard for most now.
Yeah.
I think my account is 16, but yeah.
Okay, so somewhere around there.
So I've been doing this. Actually, I've been doing the original quality backup, which counts against your storage. Because I don't take that many photos that I'm too worried about. And I think I'm like at 11 gigabytes, and this is dating back to the original Pixel, 5 years ago?
Right.
So
the good thing is, if you are a Pixel owner, you will continue to get free unlimited backup. If you are another kind of Android user, your backups will now start to count against your allowed storage. And that for some people who do take a lot of photos, that can be a significant expense. I mean, I pay for iCloud on the Apple system. I do now I do 2 terabytes because my whole family. I also back up to the devices to the cloud, all that sort of stuff. So none of that was ever Apple doesn't give you that stuff for free. You get like 5 gigs for free, which is ridiculous. But
it's nothing.
Yeah. So Google is sort of following suit. In fact, Google has been pulling back on a lot of the free tier of things they've been doing for a long time. Right. And this is one of them. And there's this interesting point that this one guy, Casey Newton on Twitter, says, points out Google earned $11 billion in profits last quarter. Okay. So Google is making money. Okay. So
that's per quarter. That's
per
not
quarter.
Annually.
Right.
They're not hurting.
They also say right there in the terms of service, they use your uploaded photos to train its machine language algorithms. So that's, as he says, offers them enormous competitive benefits, all the access to all these photos. So they're getting a financial benefit out of you storing your photos there. And points out the free Google photo storage helped to drive tons of startups out of the market. Everpix, Loom, Ever, Picture Life. Now that they're gone and Google is tired of losing money on photos, they flipped the revenue switch. Does this sound familiar to anyone?
Yeah, this just goes back to the whole thing where you're the product, not the consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases, people are paying. Yeah.
Yeah.
What this reminds me of is Google Reader. So there used to be a ton of RSS Reader apps out there and services. Right. Google comes along with free Reader, drives all the others out of business, and then they announce, well, we're not interested in doing this anymore. We're turning it off. And basically, in one sense, social media did the other half of the job, helped kill blogging. The small blogging,
or at least put it to sleep. I mean, we've talked before that there seems to be a resurgence in blogging style, posting and things like that. So I mean, I think that's kind of a good thing too. But yeah, and of course, again, we'll say this again: Google is not the only company to do this. Plenty of other companies have bought. Apple has done this. Amazon has done this.
They all do it.
You name the company, they will buy a technology or develop a technology, either get what they need out of it and throw the rest of the way, or become the monopolistic side of that technology and then start, charging for it.
Right. Right. It feels a little anti-competitive. You'd think the Justice Department might have a look at some of these things after a while. Maybe not. Depends. Maybe who's in power, I guess. But it's or the EU looks at it, or somebody.
See, that's the one I was thinking of. How many times is Google going to go before the EU before they start getting seriously smacked down by them? I mean, just the fact that they can't just offer Google Chrome, they have to allow for the options of switching it. I mean, there's different. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on over there that we don't quite see here in the United States.
That's true. So the bottom line on the Google Photos is starting June 1st, 2021, new photo and video uploads will count against your 15 gigabytes of free storage that you get with your Google account.
Unless you've got a Pixel from the Pixel 5 and before. Then we'll continue, according to this, if it's at the high quality, not the original quality, but the high quality, it'll continue to be free.
And anything backed up before June 1st, 2021 will not be count against. So they're also, just to keep in mind, there's also been, they've been pushing more, talking about purging unused old accounts. So if you've got an old Google account that you stored a bunch of stuff in and you never access it, you're just keeping it there as sort of deep cold storage, access it every once in a while, because if you don't, Google could delete it. I mean, you think about how many server farms of old data like that Google has to keep running. I mean, it's got to be crazy. So just something to keep in mind. All right, I think that'll do it for our headlines this week. Let's move on to our picks of the week. Father Corey, what's your pick of the week?
So with all this talk about smart technology and everything, I'm kind of going with a new version of an old technology. And that old technology is a trickle charger for a car. If you've had a car that, especially way back when, back in the old days, if you had a car that you're going to leave stored, a lot of times you would hook the battery up, sometimes even just in the car, to a trickle charger that it would sit, say, over the winter and just keep the battery fresh so that the battery wasn't being drained.
Right.
Well, ironically, today, even though our cars are much more developed or dependable, the battery's technology is much more dependable. Cars are drawing more off of the battery than they ever have when they're just sitting there.
Right.
Because you've got the computer of the car, you've got the clock, you've got, of course, these newer cars have much more technology that they have to maintain. Some of them have their internet connections and all this stuff that's going on. And so a car that you used to be able to let sit even throughout the winter and it would fire right up. Now you're lucky if you get a couple of weeks. So what I picked up, and of course, this is from the store that everybody who loves cheap tools loves, Harbor Freight.
Yes.
If you've never been to a Harbor Freight and you love tools, you're missing out because they are the mecca of cheap tools. Well, it's the Centec 12-volt Deluxe battery maintainer and float charger. It's basically a wall wart that on the other end is the clips for your battery to hook up to your car battery. And the purpose of it is to run at 12 volts. 13 volts is about where mine is running, but no car system is truly a 12-volt system. It's usually about a 14-volt system. And it just sits there and it just keeps putting enough juice into the system to handle all those maintenance things and to keep the battery fresh. So that when you get in that car after a month or two, it just cranks right over like you just drove it this morning. You know?
Right.
And so I've got one of those that plugs into the plug-in and the outlet in the garage, and it's got about a 10-foot long cord that I've got plugged into the front end of the car, and it just sits there and runs. And it does put enough juice that if your battery is a little bit depleted, it will catch it up and then just sit there and trickle charge it. And it's got a little LED to show you what it's doing. Is it charging? Is it almost done charging? It'll actually sit there and flash to let you know it's almost done charging, and then it's just a solid green light to let you know it's maintaining. So simple stuff is like $20 at Harbor Freight. It's actually one of the more advanced ones at Harbor Freight. So it shows you how cheap Harbor Freight can be.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a boat that you winter over, or if you live in the northern climes and you have a car that you don't like to drive in the snow, or
that's why I bought it.
That's what I figured. Or I bet it would work for a motorcycle too. That's
anything with a 12-volt system. I mean, even like RC cars. If you get like a 12-volt RC car or something like that,
Yep. I saw on their page, it says like even if you have like a battery backup on your sump pump, because you don't use your sump pump very often, hopefully. So you want that to be ready to go. That's good. Excellent. Jack, what's your pick this week?
My pick this week is actually the Fitbit Charge 4. Talking about the Amazon Halo, and this is kind of what I was comparing it to. This one, it's usually $150, but it's $99 on Amazon right now. It has the screen, the OLED screen that looks really good. It has built-in GPS. It does the sleep tracking. It's waterproof. It pretty much does everything that the Halo does, but it has that watch function and the screen.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's the same size as the Halo, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
I'm still curious why Amazon decided to not put a screen on it, but yeah. And of course, Fitbit's been around forever, and they're reliable. That's for sure. So my pick, which has disappeared from the Google Doc, but I remember what it is anyway, because it's sitting right in front of me, is the new Apple HomePod Mini. I picked one of these up for my birthday and just got it today. So I've been playing with it, and it sounds good. I don't have a HomePod, so I don't have that to compare it against. But it sounds better than the Echoes. We have several different Echoes here, and I've been testing it out with both the podcasts and music. And a couple things I love about it is that it pairs so quickly with my iPhone. It's so much easier to connect, because with the Echo, you're supposed to be able to just say it verbally, Echo connect to iPhone. Mine's called DB11, my initials in the number, and sometimes it will do it, sometimes it won't, and it's not. So then you have to go to the Bluetooth menu. It's a pain in the neck. With this one, it's just AirPlay. Boom, it works. They're supposed to be able to just like walk in while it's playing and tap it on the HomePod and have it transfer. I haven't done that yet. I'm not sure. I got to look up Apple in its usual, our stuff is so easy, you don't need instructions way. It has not provided the instructions on that. So it's not that easy. So I have to look it up and find out what I got to do that. But it's nice, and it's small. I mean, it's like the size of size of a softball. It's a little bigger than a baseball. Small than a softball. It's kind of nice, and it looks good. So HomePod Mini. And they apparently, if I got a second one, you can do stereo pairing with them, which is kind of cool.
That would be nice.
Yeah. I might end up getting a second one to put out in the other room in the kitchen. My wife uses the Echo in the kitchen to listen to the Liturgy of the Hours, the Divine Office. And the problem I have is she'll walk into our bedroom, and it's just far enough out to be on the edge of Bluetooth range. So it'll be going connecting to phone, disconnecting from phone, connecting to phone, like, disconnect your phone from the Echo. You know, I'm yelling across the house.
Yeah.
With this, it's just disconnects, and it doesn't have all that hassle. So, and that, which is good.
One thing I like, and I know the Apple devices can do it, is with Google, is I've got the whole house set up where you can just say, instead of connect to this speaker, just connect to the main floor.
Right.
Play through all where you are, you're going to hear it. It connects to all of them, and that's really a nice feature. I think Amazon can do that as well. But
they can do if you are playing, like, say you're from your music library on it, not if you're not Bluetoothing it. But you can't do it if you're from the phone through all of them.
Yeah, that's all right. Chromecast, you know, of course, that's Google's version of AirPlay.
Yes, yeah. So that I have a feeling over the years I'll end up with a couple more of these around the house at some point. And then if I'll get a few Google Homes, and they'll all like sprout like mushrooms in my house.
And just have the fights you see on the web where they get each other to talk to, get them to talk to each other.
Yes, exactly. All right. So that should do it. Those are our picks of the week. What did you think of our discussion? If you have any comments or feedback on anything we talked about today, are you sick of your broken smart home? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com, and we'll have links to all the headlines from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you can, we really do appreciate it when you write a review for the podcast in Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast directories, and share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow our community and reach more listeners. Until next time, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thank you, Dom.
Jack Barazini, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.